Welcome to Fresh Tech Tips. I am Derrell Noris, CEO of Fresh Tech Solutionz. Today I have a couple of my business partners with me.
I'm Nicholas Mbaezue-Daniel, founder of Aegis Project Management.
And I'm Dr. Doug Franklin, co-founder and CEO of Deck Launch LLC. How are you guys doing today?
Doing pretty good, Doc. How you doing, Nick?
Keeping it moving, man, keeping it moving.
So today's Fresh Tech Tip topic is everyone is doing it. So Nick, let's talk about one of these beautiful definitions of yours as far as market saturation.
Yeah, man, and before I do get into the definition, let's just talk a little bit about how this topic kind of came up. Because in this period where there's been like increase of ideas and people not actually having time to act on those ideas, one of the things that people are asking themselves is, how many people are doing the same thing that I'm doing, or how many people are feeling the same way that I'm feeling with this idea? And that's one of the things that obviously we help people figure out from the Deck Launch perspective. But it just got us curious to thinking about, market saturation and what that means. So market saturation is a situation that arises when the volume of a product or service in the marketplace has been maximized, which means you have something to offer. The market says, hey, we need it, but up to a certain point. At some point, either all the need has been met, or your product or service is obsolete. So we just kind of wanted to talk about what that meant for entrepreneurs and small businesses out there.
Yeah, it's really important for you to understand a lot of what goes on in just the nature of building your strategy, because we do often tell our clients, if when we ask them about their competition and they say they don't have any, we tell them it's generally not very likely. And it's because everybody's actually doing it. There's a bunch of businesses that have a similar idea to you, but the major question always is how will you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, and then that's great because, like you said, there are a lot of people that come to us thinking they don't have any competitors. And we tend to break that theory really, really quickly, especially if we throw it to Dr. Doug and let him start digging. So, but yeah, so Nick, how do we determine market saturation?
Yeah, I'm sure people who are watching this right now, they probably have ideas of their own, and there's so many methods out there. But some of the ones that stuck out to us, just basically that made sense the most. The first one is gauging growth. So we think that a good indication of whether the market is saturated, meaning whether the market still wants whatever it is you have to offer or not, is what kind of growth are people in this business experiencing. So for example, if it's a restaurant or let's e-commerce, everybody's doing e-commerce, and you're like, man, everybody's doing it. How do I know that I should go ahead and go into it if the market is saturated or not? Okay, well then just see how successful are the people who are entering the market still being. Where is their trajectory? Is it going up? Is it plateauing, or is it going back down? So gauging the growth. If the market need for product or service has not been satisfied or is still growing, then you probably can't say that the market is saturated at that time. And then the next thing would be locally. But before we actually move to locally, Doug, can you explain a little bit more technically about how to find the size of market and then finding how successful a company is within that?
Yes. So there's a handful of things that we generally tend to use. So there's a way to look up basically the size of a market based on a NAICS code. There's other databases that we'll also use, like Statista, and some other softwares that we like. So what do we do when we have those things? So that's the macro, right? So now we know how large the market is, how much demand there is for the market, and those are what we generally put for our big numbers for market opportunity. And what one of the things that we really like to do is not necessarily think about the whole big world. We also like to think, to look at things much smaller. And so one of the things we do try to pride ourselves with working with our clients is figuring out who's in these specific niches to make sure that that our clients have an opportunity. And so that's just kind of like if it's e-commerce or restaurants or apparel. That's how we try to find the best way to fit you in, by looking at the side, looking at everything overall to see if there's actually something out there for you, but also shrinking it back down to something that's a little bit more targeted.
Yeah. So back to that's great information, Doug. And it's I'm glad you said that, because there's also been times where people came to us with competitors that actually wasn't even their competitors.
Right.
So digging deep into those niche markets is very important, in trying to find out who your true competitors are. But Nick, let's go back on this local competition.
Yeah, no, that was a perfect transition. Like you said, you look at it on a large scale and then bring it down, and that's where our next point is. Local competition. So for a lot of businesses, okay, yeah, this is how many people are doing this in you have the whole large market, but I mean, maybe that doesn't really affect you. You're really worried about what's in your area or who's doing, exactly what you're doing and can actually affect you. So that's what we'll talk to. We talk about local competition. And it's just that if you're doing something that somebody is doing maybe 10 miles, if you have a 50-mile radius, that's most likely going to be your immediate market. So that's probably where you're worried about before you get to, somebody's doing this in Dallas or in the next city over. So usually that's what most clients are worried about first, and it makes sense.
I love that, Nick. So let's get into some examples. I know there's a lot of saturated markets out there. The main one that comes to mind for me is just simply because I do a lot of networking and I always meet realtors. So how do we determine if that's actually a saturated market, or is it, is the need necessary for all of these people?
So people are still definitely buying houses, and it's an interesting conversation, because we have friends who have their own realtor operation, and I think a good friend of mine, he just got a whole new office. So he's obviously still still doing well. Well, and you see some other companies, they're worried about with tech coming in. So now some realtors are being replaced by algorithms now. So on one hand, you see, some local people still doing it, and I'm sure a lot of people have lost jobs. But on the other hand, you see something coming and eating into their market space. But to me, the most important thing is that houses are always going to be sold, and you're going to need somebody to help buyers through that process. So until that step is out of the process, I don't think. I think the only thing that can happen is that the way that it's done changes, but I don't think the marketplace is necessarily saturated, in my opinion.
And so we've talked about how to determine if the market is saturated. So in a market like real estate or technology or whatever, e-commerce, how do you stand out? How do you stand out from your competitors? Dr. Doug, let's talk about the number one answer my number one answer.
It's definitely service. It's definitely customer service. And that's one of the things that you should always try to go out of your way to be able to execute. I love how in pre-production we talked about thinking about it from the Chick-fil-A the Chick-fil-A model, where you're going out of your way to make sure that you're taking care of your client with good reason. When you do things like that, it values your business way above everybody else. One of the things that we were always told with regards to strategy is that price is not always a competitive advantage unless you have some other operational things that people cannot imitate. So, but the first place where you can always stand out is just by being providing the best customer service possible, because it's very easy and it doesn't cost you anything other than you doing the right thing for your customer.
Yeah, and this I think that's a very important way, easy way to stand out. But it can also make you stand out in a bad way. You know, if you have one customer with a bad experience, you know, it could really hurt your brand. And you know, we're not perfect at all, especially at Fresh Tech. We're definitely not perfect. You know, if we do have, you know, some kind of lack in customer service area, what we do is we try to go extra and above beyond to, you know, to make that client, you know, understand that we actually do care. And I love how you said about the Chick-fil-A model, because, you know, they're doing things perfect. They're doing life perfect. They're doing the extra steps. They're setting the example. Everybody knows it. So to be recognized for something like that is game changing, because, you know, they just like to make people feel good, and who doesn't like to feel good?
You can't buy that kind of brand, bro. You can't buy that kind of brand, that kind of, because when people think Chick-fil-A, even if you don't eat the food, like people who just hate their chicken, they don't like whatever it is the recipe is, they just like, but they know what the customer service is like. So their feelings about the company is always positive. I mean, that's amazing. So that's why we call it superhero customer service. They're always trying to save the day at Chick-fil-A, and that's how we're trying to be. I mean, even on our missteps, I think the customer can feel if you make a mistake. The customer can feel if you care or not about the mistake, about trying to make it right. So that's at
right.
the very least that anybody can do.
So let's go on to number 2. So having a unique process or a unique model, operating your business differently from your competitors. So Nick, you want to get into this a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a good shout to Fresh Tech. Because like you mentioned, you tell the story all the time, being able to offer technology to small businesses who did not have that option previously. And that the reason why that's we were able to do that is because of the process. So the process being unique, finding something that could differentiate us from everybody else, and then leaning on it and providing value because of that. Then that's something that you can take to the bank all day. So that's what we're talking about. So whatever it is that you're doing, spreading the process out, knowing what your competitors are doing, seeing what extra mile you can go within the process. It's still kind of similar to customer service. All these things are going to have the theme of going that extra mile. Is either you're doing it on the front-facing end, or you go back in your process. Really, ideally, you should be doing everything together. But it's always about going that extra mile, and this time we're talking about your process or your model.
Yeah, and I think and definitely shout out to Fresh Tech, but that's just one of the things that's really cool is that Derrell was able to bring this customer service experience together with a pricing experience that is sustainable, but additionally helps benefit so many people that need things like that. And so, because people do need tech, and the greatest thing about it is that when you start to put yourself in the position to be able to provide equity to other people, it leads us into what our third piece is, which is our culture. So it's like, so basically, now we're talking about how does it feel to work in your business. You know, what are you really doing this for? And one of the things we were reading in pre-production, when they talk about your company's culture, is like, what are you doing this for? You're at some point you think you're doing it for money, but there's always something else that really keeps you working in your business night and day. Helping people out was Derrell's goal with Fresh Tech, and ended up being one of the goals of Deck Launch and Aegis. And it just continues to spread like wildfire with the time that we spend with each other, because we really value that nature of just helping and serving the community and helping lift new businesses to the next level.
Beautifully said. So yeah, I'm 100% behind that. And Nick, can we talk about our fourth way to stand out? Something that we need to get better at Fresh Tech.
Yeah, and Doug, you covered culture on that last one as well. I just want to make sure people catch that, because these things that we're talking about, I mean, there's always turnover. So we started this by talking about market saturation. We forgot to mention this point. The reason why we're getting into how to stand out is because, I mean, sometime in the last decade, they measured new businesses as over 500,000 every year coming in, and a little bit under that amount going out each year. So you can see the turnover. So something must be, the people who are coming in are doing something right, and people who are staying are doing something right, and people who are leaving are doing something wrong. So how do you become some of those people who are staying, who are doing better? And that's kind of what we're talking about. And one of those ways that we've seen is by making an offer or a guarantee. I think lots of people know, and they end up becoming marketing slogans, but lots of people know what Allstate is offering you, what kind of savings they're going to offer you, what they're guaranteeing. If you come to us, we're going to give you this, or Progressive, or an insurance company that have a lot of money around their marketing. So we know those jingles, but there's plenty of businesses that have a value proposition, and then they make a guarantee on offer based on that value proposition. So when you think about them, you know, this is exactly what I'm going to get from them, and it brings you to them. It kind of helps them gain traction in the marketplace.
Yeah, man. So I really want to thank you guys for joining me as usual. It's always a great time to be on Facebook Live and all of the podcasts out there. I want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening. We know your time is very valuable, and we appreciate every second you spend with us. It is important that you realize everyone is doing it, and you need to just determine how you can stand out while doing it better. Please join the Fresh Tech Tips Facebook group. We're here every Monday around 12 o'clock p.m. And we will see y'all next week at 12. Thanks for joining Fresh Tech Tips.